Welcome to Boundless Pursuit, a weekly podcast providing motivation, entertainment, and education to anglers and outdoorsmen. I hope that the stories you'll find here will encourage you to chase your passion more fervently, to open your mind to new opportunities and perspectives. Your engagement and feedback is critical to the growth of this show, and I would love to hear your suggestions on topics or potential guests. You can reach me at boundlesspursuitfishing@gmail.com or at my website, www.boundless-pursuit.com. That's where you'll find all related articles, media, and merchandise. Please remember, the show will gain traction from your support. Be sure to like, comment, and share this podcast to your friends and connections. I'm your host, David Graham. Now let's get on to today's episode. Today's episode is going to be a little different because the guy you're going to hear from is not an angler, but he is a guy with a phenomenal story that you're not going to want to miss. His name is JC. He goes by JC Defeats. Now, JC is a person with a story unlike anything you've ever heard before. He's a guy that immigrated to the United States at age 8 from Bogota, Colombia. He's a military veteran, having served in the elite Air Force Pararescue PJ unit. He's a first responder, a firefighter, a triathlete, and an Ironman. JC is a business owner and an entrepreneur. But perhaps most interestingly, in 2022, JC survived a horrific alligator attack while filming a training session swimming across a lake in Florida. The result of that attack was catastrophic physical damages: a crushed skull, a broken jaw, and the partial removal of his temporal lobe. Incredibly, JC only seems to have become more mentally strong in the wake of that attack. This is a guy that continues to serve others. This is a guy that continues to train every single day. This is a guy that continues to put positivity out there. He pushes a positive message. With a guy that has every reason to be upset at the world and to stop doing the things that he's passionate about and loves, has only put his foot on the gas. He has only picked up speed. This is a story about redemption, growth, and overcoming unimaginable odds, and you're not going to want to miss this one. All right. JC Defeats. What's going on, man?
How are you, David? Thank you for having me, man. Appreciate you.
No, I'm really excited to get you in particular onto this podcast because you have got an incredible story. I remember seeing your story in the news. When was it? Maybe September of last year. You survived an unbelievable alligator attack, and it was on video, on drone video. I was like, this is the wildest thing I've ever seen. You know, it's kind of a clickbaity title, and sometimes those sort of stories end up being underwhelming. And I figured, okay, well, you know, here's a guy that probably had a real quick little encounter with some little small alligator, and then clicking it and seeing the extent of your injuries, I was like, oh my gosh. Because, man, I'm going to tell you, I have grown up around the water in southeastern United States. I've got a lot of time spent in very close proximity with alligators, even working with them. So to know that you had this encounter and came through it is pretty incredible. But then when I dug a little bit deeper, I saw that, you know, the layers to your character is so much deeper than just that. And so it's really sort of explained to me how you've been able to cope with something that quite frankly could have very easily killed you. I mean, you have circled the rim closer than 99% of people on this planet and been right there on that edge. So very fascinating. But, you know, when I hear stories like that, I always want to know, well, what has pushed this guy to rebound the way that he has? Because going through your social and seeing the active lifestyle that you lived even prior to this event, but continue to do so in the wake of it, is really impressive to me. So I don't know, man, just kind of take me through some of your history. I'm very much more interested in your development prior to that incident. But I mean, have you always been this active guy? I mean, let's go back to what, high school, sports, anything.
Oh man, it was what an awesome intro, actually, because for some reason, yesterday I was in the shower and I was actually thinking about my resume, and it's one of those things in where you try to you only write a resume when you absolutely have to, and it's not something that I absolutely have to do. But with the development of my company and people that don't know me, I do want kind of an about JC page, which is always so embarrassing to write, dude. You always want kind of somebody else to write it. And actually, somebody did write it for me,
Mm-hmm.
which is a huge plus and a huge blessing. Was from this organization that I work with for my philanthropy efforts for Defeat X Adventure Company. And she wrote it for me while I was in the hospital. And I was like, I was kind of impressed. It sounds kind of funny, but I was like, dude, I would love to hang out with this guy. It's like, oh, that's me. That sounds kind of douchey. That sounds kind of douchey, but it was a beautiful letter, and it was actually for an award who was sent out. But I guess to actually answer your question, I was actually born in Bogota, in Colombia.
Okay.
And my family migrated here when I was around 8 years old, from just what the economy was doing there was not very it wasn't a great place for entrepreneurs, which are my parents. They both were in businesses of their own, actually, creating Levi's, or not creating, but putting together Levi jeans. And it was kind of during a time that I can't remember where they're made out now. I'm pretty sure they're changed places, but there once upon a time they were, I guess, put together, or at least the zipper was made in Colombia. And the economy got really bad, and my mom came first, and then we came afterwards. And I was kind of raised, and everything that had to do with, from a pretty young age, I've always loved sport, just loved being outside. I love being outside. And in high school, I pretty much did every single sport, whether I was good or bad. I just love to compete. Wrestling, track, swimming, running, soccer. I don't even know how I did all of those, but looking at my letterhead, it had so many pins that I said, this doesn't make sense. Some of these sports were in the same time. I'm like, I had no idea how I did that. But and then afterwards, I was pretty much through my whole adult life, when I was 17 on, I've been pretty much a public servant, and public servant in different realms. The first one was, obviously, I had tons of jobs, like from Publix grocery store bagger to working behind as a cook. But when I was 18, I've already graduated. I became actually a mortgage broker. And at the same time that I was a mortgage broker, I was actually a transporter for Baker Acts. For, I don't know if you know what Baker Act is, BA-52, for people that basically have suicidal ideations and they're a harm to themselves or others. Wow. They kind of meet a criteria in order for them to be like, hey, you no longer have these rights. Mm-hmm. You are going to be taken to a professional, quotes, excuse me. Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine.
And so I transported these people while I was actually working as a mortgage broker. I don't know why I did that job. I get something kind of something about working and helping people.
Yeah.
But I knew obviously the money wasn't there, and I wanted to do something with that. So at 17, I purchased my first home, working like 3 different jobs to include the mortgage broker one. And then after that, I realized that I really didn't care too much about how much money I made. It was more about how I can develop and help people. Obviously, I need to put bread on the table. You know what I mean? That's how the world goes around. But it was very important to me to connect with people that were in severe need. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of lined me up with continuing going to school, getting my fire certification, getting my EMT certification. And then finishing my paramedic license. And when I was doing that, when I was in fire school, I learned about rescue swimmers, and then I also learned about PJs, pararescue jumpers, or J's.
Okay, yeah.
And then during that time, I was like, oh, I can not only can I help and save people like firefighters can, I can potentially go and save the guys that stand at stadiums all the time. The people that are, everyone's saluting them, everyone's like, for their service. And I'm like, dude, if I have a chance to help those guys, I'm like, sign me up 100%. Let's do it. So that's, and I mean, I heard how difficult it was and everything else. So that training got me lined up with, I'm like, all right, well, obviously mindset and also physical, I need to figure out how I can train for this. And that's what got me into the triathlon world. Then I started doing triathlon, I started competing. And that's when I went into the pipeline. So after that, and it was about 6 years later of my contract, I passed all my schools, except airborne. I actually got badly hurt during the first jump.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, dude, static jumping is ridiculous. I don't even know why they do that crap anymore. But it's like, they have the technology, man. Stop hurting your people. But whatever. Maybe they don't have the competence in everyone, and I guess they can't trust everybody to pull their own cord, so they have to rely on a cord to pull it forward. I don't know if you know the difference between static and free fall, but it's actually that easy.
No, I'm learning here. I'm too scared to jump out of planes.
Yeah, that's all right,
I'm scared to jump down a 6-foot ladder. So you can count me out of that one.
What's funny, dude, is that I've been in, I mean, at night with nods, not really knowing kind of like where any of my stuff is. And I've jumped at night, and dude, I'm afraid of heights 100%.
Right.
Like you, dude. But it's just one of those things is where like you kind of have faith and not only in your equipment, but on whatever you do believe. And it's like, oh, this is what I'm doing, and I'm going to go.
Well, so, I think I'm not afraid of the dark. So if somebody said you absolutely have to jump out of this plane right now, I would almost prefer it to be nighttime so I can't see. Because realistically, my eyes are probably going to be closed anyway. So it's going to be dark regardless.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's true, except you got to do crap. You got to do stuff. You got to know where your stuff is. And
you're not just falling.
When you land, the depth perception. That's actually another time that I've got pretty badly injured with a concussion. I was heading up the way that you know where you're going in comparison to your teammates is the lights, the red and green. So if it's red, you are looking at the front of somebody, so you're getting ready to collide to somebody, so you want to move to the right side, and they're going to move to the right side so you don't hit them. But if you're green, you're good. Well, I was seeing red, and I was like in the last couple 100 feet, so I auto-corrected really hard, didn't know how close I was to the ground, and I smashed the ground like super hard. That was my first concussion. But yeah. Anyways, to go on. So I went overseas, and I did my contract. I learned a lot of things, but it was pretty much, I told my wife that I was going to do one contract, and then if she was in agreement, I was going to go ahead and continue doing it. And if we were not in the same kind of mindset, we were going to leave. And it's funny because she was good to stay, but I was not. There was something that was really pulling me away even before my contract ended, when I wanted to not just go home, but I wanted to help more. I wanted to do more for the masses, and I knew that I wanted to start my own business, and I didn't know what the hell that looked like. I really did not. I had no idea, but I kind of really just kind of trusted in that decision, and I wanted to figure out what it is that I needed to do in order to kind of fulfill that idea. So then before I finished my contract, I sent a couple of resumes to departments that were hiring in my area. So I kind of got hired before I could even start. And so I never stopped working. So I started working with the city of Baltimore as a firefighter paramedic.
Yeah.
Since I already still had all of that certification. And then that's kind of what I've been doing. I really went deeper into the triathlon world, and then the triathlon world, and where I was I guess what they would call the world class athlete, and where I was ranked in the top 10, or actually I was first place in 2019 in Florida. And that was just me just really having a really good time and just seeing how much I can push it. And in a couple occasions, I could have gone for my pro card. But that was really never something that I wanted to do, because if I wanted to go for my pro card, I knew that I was just going to be mediocre. Every single time I was just going to rank among the lowest professional athlete. And not that I cared. It was more like my time was never going to be completely 100% to this sport, or even 50%. And also I'm older. So for a lot of those guys, they've kind of done triathlon all of their life, and they're just like above their genetic gift in endurance, which I'm not gifted in that at all. Mine is just all hard work, like hard work, super grinding. Like, so when I see somebody that has kind of like that genetic ability, it's like, dude, just work a little harder, you're going to be amazing.
Yeah.
But, and now, obviously after my incident, I'm still in the fire service. And I think that I will be going back for a little while, until I completely figure out what my business looks like in a monetary way, I guess. If it can completely take over, and I can be comfortable living the life that I live, then I'm 100% going to do that. But I'm not going to put my wife in any further stress than I already have for the last 5 months.
Right. Yeah. Well, she seems like, from what I've gathered, she seems like she's been a godsend as far as the support that, I really looked at every article about you that I could possibly find, and the common denominator seemed to be your wife's presence. So that's a blessing in itself. But just unpacking your layers of, I don't know, character development and growth is interesting to me, because you kind of, obviously you highlighted experiencing immigrating to the U.S. I know that can be an extremely stressful thing. I imagine. I've had another guy on here that had a similar trek, but then I know firsthand experience the kind of mentality that you get when you're wrestling. So you go from, immigrating at a young age, the uncertainties that are there, to a sport like wrestling, coupled with the other sports that you got involved with. And then just having those humble starting jobs. And then it seems like you've had such a progressive track in, putting more of an attitude of servitude on yourself since then. And I know that that's an interesting one, because I feel like a lot of men have that voice in the back of their mind that's like a greater calling, but they almost feel, I don't know, indebted by their education or indebted by societal pressures to be part of the greater machine that drives the economy, and not so much answering that call to adventure or serving others, or, doing that. And I think some people, clearly that voice speaks louder than others, but a lot of folks, I think, hear it, and I don't know, it's like they let that window go by. They let the opportunities to take that track in life go by. And if once you start, I don't know, you have to take that leap at an early age, I think, or it's hard to go back, because like you said, once you get to a point where you're indebted to making sure your kids are comfortable, your wife is comfortable, you can't start taking those reckless life risks. But at least you're doing something still, like even if your company, which sounds awesome, is supplemental at this point in time. What it's supplementing is a really, really like admirable career path anyway. The PJ thing I get stuck on because when I went to the Citadel, I roomed with a guy. He's a state trooper now, but he had really, really gotten interested in the PJ thing and kind of explained to me, a lot of people don't realize and I feel like your humility sort of let you gloss over the unbelievably difficult selection process that Air Force pararescue swimmers go through. I'm familiar enough, and I've got another buddy, and this is, small chance, but I know that community is small. By any chance, do you know a guy named Thomas Sullivan? Okay, I'll take it as no.
No, the last name sounds familiar. I separated in 2018, and the reason that I may actually be the last name sounds actually very familiar.
Yeah.
The thing is that right out of the schoolhouse, I was actually one of the two or three. It's actually not even that many people that was fortunate enough to get selected to go overseas right away out of the schoolhouse.
Okay.
So I went out right away.
Yeah.
And because of that, I was actually even in a smaller unit than all the other units were. So in the bigger units that had like a lot of my teammates going into and where I would have, not that I didn't have kind of a close relationship with them, but dude, that name sounds really familiar. If you show me a picture, maybe
I'll have to send you some pictures. Well, he's 35 as well. We graduated from college in 2010, and I think he would have jumped straight into that career path. I mean, he commissioned as an officer right out of the Citadel. We went to military college. I went to law enforcement. I didn't go the military route, but I don't know his path because I think he's still in it. He's actually a really avid fly fisherman too. So he's like a guy that has that. And I want to have him on here, but I also, I also want to respect that if he's still in that, I don't know how much he can even discuss it, but sidebar conversation. Right. Yeah. Sidebar conversations. I'll shoot you a picture of him. He's he's a really solid dude, but anyway, Sullivan, that's a common name. So who knows, but, that one's always been very interesting to me. I got a great deal of admiration for the guys that do it because, y'all are in the air, you're under the ocean, you're on mountains, you're doing those long distance rucks and, runs and things like that. And I know the attrition rate's like upwards of, I don't know, 80% or something like that. So
it depends on what you kind of read. Obviously some years is closer to 95. And for me, for example, if I started my initial indoc with 120, out of those 120, after the first, let's say, dev indoc, after indoc, there was, out of the 120, there was less than 20 left. And then out of those 20, after let's say PJU is done, I had, I think, 6. But so it was, I mean, I guess obviously more classes come in and join because there would be no way that would be like an efficient system if they had 6 dudes graduate after 2.5 years of school.
Yeah.
So I did graduate with, I think, like 20 something, but out of the 20 something, that was kind of like an accumulation of probably, if I had to guess, around 600 people. Or actually probably more than that, but 600 people that I got to meet, not the people that started kind of like the boot camp and then went to dev. So if I had to guess, probably over 1,000 people, and there was like 20 something people that made it out of that.
Oh wow!
And it's man, that was, I always kind of align that with the funnest time I never want to have again.
Yeah,
for sure. Which, I mean, I guess it lines up with a lot of people's military career, some better than some others and some worse, for sure. But it was very interesting for me because I was always looking from the perspective of like a wider spectrum perspective, meaning like I was looking at people that were much stronger than me, much faster than me, But for some reason, like, for example, I saw two collegiate swimmers and I can't remember if he was like an Olympic decathlon, or it doesn't matter. I can't remember what it was, but they would tell me their accolades like athletically, and then when I
Hmm.
saw them drop out, I was like, what?
Yeah, yeah.
What do you mean? It's always so confusing and also disheartening. I was like, wait, dude, you're such a good dude. And also, I mean, a lot of people were just not able to do it
Right. Yeah.
physically, physiologically almost, because people find out that they had heart problems, people passed out too many times, and people would do all sorts of. There's also many reasons why
Right. Right.
you either got flushed out by the system or you quit yourself.
Yeah, that's always interesting that it's the mentality dynamic, and you see it on different scales. And obviously, you've seen it at peak levels where, you're getting put in some of the most stressful situations you can in the hardest type of environment. But even at the smallest, like I have let's say a management role where I'm managing laborers, and that's what I do. And I'll have physical jobs, and it's always very fascinating to me that I can get two different employees to go do a physical task. One of them might be built like an athlete, a young man who has the physical tools to do the job. And then the other might be a small, elderly, I don't know, physically limited individual, male, female, whatever. And a lot of times you'll see the guy that has all the tools to succeed quit. And I'm like, well, what is the difference maker? And it's purely mental. So I've always been real fascinated when I see that, and I'm like, well, there's a conditioning for the body that's physical, and then there's a conditioning for the mind that's something else, and you can't see that. You have no way to know. I mean, you can't tell whether it's some big strong person or some little small frail person what their mental fitness is. So I always get fascinated by understanding how people got that condition. But it's funny that you saw that real time in that environment, because I witnessed that too, even in different elements. But it's funny when you see that the people that have all the physical tools to do it, and for whatever reason mentally check out or what have you.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? Yeah, I think there's three type of strength, and obviously there's all sorts when you branch them out. But at the core is three factors that kind of move us forward, and you hit those two, which is the physical and then the mental. And the one that people kind of forget a lot about is that spiritual, and
Mm,
where they kind of and they really don't even know how to work it out. They don't even know what it is. But if you have even uncertainty in that one, I don't know if you can really. I think you can not pretend, because I know a lot of people that don't even think about spirituality at all, whatever that means to anybody. But once they have that missing, they're never really mentally strong either.
yeah,
They're really not. Meaning they definitely portray themselves as mentally strong, but then something happens, oh, dude, or somebody dies, or they lose somebody, they lose something. They're a mess. They have no idea.
yeah,
It's like, oh, I thought I was mentally strong. I thought it was this. It was like, yeah, but you're still human, right?
right, right.
So yeah, there's that.
No, I like the way that you put that, and that's awesome. I agree. I've always kind of said too that the people that are the most keenly aware of their mortality and the uncertain timing that might show up, just seem to, I don't know, they seem more mentally fit as well. And a lot of times people don't recognize that until they have had an experience, or they have observed other people encounter that. And your story is interesting because you have kind of seen both. I know as a first responder, and I imagine the kind of military things you were involved with, because by nature what you were doing was extractions and rescue type missions.
Right.
So you're not exactly diving out of an airplane into a daisy field.
Yeah.
It's you're
Yeah.
showing up to somebody's absolute worst day,
Yeah.
and now you're doing it as a firefighter. And I recall my, albeit brief stint in law enforcement, I kind of got that perspective fresh out of college, no real life experience, no experience with any real adversity or difficulties. And I got thrust into it quickly. And I was, it's very humbling. And I went on fire calls, and I remember like watching those guys run in. I'm like, oh my goodness, like the reality of it is so much more profound than what you see on TV, what you see in the movies. And to see, kind of from the outside looking in, somebody that's, I don't know, on death's doorstep, or that has transpired in some situations. Um, it kind of gives you an interesting perspective, and it makes you appreciate the time you have, and it makes you, I don't know, kind of devote yourself to living a more fulfilling life during the time you still have. Because I've said it in other episodes on this program that if I had a greatest fear in this world, it's not an alligator, but it's a situation where I am deeply afraid of a scenario where I'm laying, let's say, and this is a morbid thing, but it's real, that I'm, I don't know, at the end of my life, laying in a deathbed, and I'm thinking back of my time here on earth. And if I did not have a fulfilling life where I had left some sort of legacy, whether it be rearing my children the correct way or having had some kind of unique life experiences, that it just is it I don't know, it fills me with like a different sort of deep guttural fear that like I don't know, some other type of scary scenario just doesn't do. But I agree, when you supplement that too with like a level of spirituality, and you're comfortable with where the afterlife's going to go, I don't know, you just become a lot more grounded and appreciative of where you're at. But you're speaking my language here for sure.
Yeah, I figured. Yeah, it's really interesting because you're talking about meeting people, even in the when you're a police officer, go into people's dire need, and where like they quite literally could not deal with whatever it is, and where they had to dial 911, right? Or they had to call whatever else for someone else to come. And of course, that that comes in a range of in where some people think it's like, wait, you're calling 911 for that? Or you're like, yeah, you're absolutely calling 911 for that. And what became very interesting for me is that as I grew up in not only in my faith, but more in my ability to see things clearly. I guess let me explain what I'm talking about. If it's very common for firefighters to, or even doctors. This happens in the ER all the time, and where a person goes in for that very common call of that stub toe. You hear it, it's like, it's like they call for a stub toe or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
And the thing is that that's very easily um, made fun of. It's like, come on, man, you stub your
Right.
toe. Like, what are you doing calling?
Hmm.
What I've realized and what I've been noticing is that they are not calling because of their stub toe. They're calling because of all of the other shit that you do not see.
Yeah, yeah.
But now they finally have a reason, as small as it may be, in where they're like, hey, can you please come to my house? And now, don't get me wrong, obviously, there's a lot of people that abuse the system, but there's also a lot of people that just are only getting help from the pharmaceutical world.
Yeah.
And that is it's a never ending cycle, man. I mean, most of the people that I would go to for anywhere from high blood pressure to deficits from strokes, CHF, COPD, you name it. As I'm talking to them, I'm also looking for the grocery bag, for the Walmart bag. And what I mean by
Mm.
that is that these people have a grocery bag full of meds, all of them, just
Yeah,
tons of
yeah.
meds. They kind of know what they're taking them for. Some of them take them religiously, some of them don't, but they're the same.
Hmm.
And that type of people are kind of like, And I have huge admiration for firefighters, for ambulance drivers, for police officers, dude. Oh, man, it quite literally hurt my heart when cops were getting shit on a lot a couple of years back, or actually even still now,
Yeah.
because some of the best humans I have ever met have been cops. Like, don't get me wrong, humans are humans. They make mistakes just
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
everyone, especially when they deal with quite literally the worst of society. But like their drive and their what they stand for, and once they have like a pretty good department and where they kind of have like a good sheriff head and we're like, hey, we're here to help the community and this is your job. Dude, oh man, those people are amazing, dude. I have such admiration for police officers. Like, that is not my cup of tea because I feel like I feel like I don't have that temperament. I think I would.
Yeah. It
I
gets
would.
tested. That's for sure. Yeah.
Oh man, yeah, dude. Like I would just. I think I take out my gun entirely too many times just to pop some in the air to calm these people down, and I think that's frowned upon. So, but yeah, man, God bless those guys. They're amazing. But that actually kind of really maneuvered me into the ethos of what my company is, and that's kind of
Mhm.
like uh, I attempt to help people before it gets really really bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I can't do it in a big huge, or maybe I can. I guess that's just completely up to what's up ahead.
Right. Well, what's interesting to me about you is it seems like every time you've gotten yourself into sort of a difficult life situation, you've made like with great intent, a personal decision to jump into something, even more difficult, whether that's whether that's career wise or just for the fun of it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's because I don't know, there's a personal satisfaction you probably get out of those things that's like maybe selfish in a way, but you got to
Mhm.
experience some really, really incredible things, I imagine, like for instance, in your experience in the Air Force. But if you were to just jump out of that straight into some mundane lifestyle, I imagine there's like an emotional crash. It's much like somebody getting off of a drug. And I think you see that with some veterans, and I've got a lot of friends who are veterans, and and I'd be honest if I'd be lying if I didn't say when I left law enforcement, I didn't go through a period of I don't know, I struggled with that decision for a while. While I feel like it was the right decision now, just financially and things like that, my personal circumstance sort of needed that change. I got into jobs where I definitely came home and I felt like this deep sense of dissatisfaction. Like, you know what? I was in a career where I might impact somebody's life in a very profound way, and now I'm not. So I think sometimes those guys, yourself included, you have to find different outlets or some other way to challenge yourself, whether it's physically, whether it's a different career, whether it's starting a business, whether it's helping somebody else. But the I think the element in you that's driving you to want to share this with other people is really admirable. But then you jumping into this like voluntary self torment that is triathlons. I'm like, you know what? Count me out of that. I mean, I can barely like I just and I try to stay physically fit. I think it's important. You needed to do that. If I'm going to prolong my passion for me is fishing. I don't want to get to a point where I can't do that anymore. So I need to start laying the groundwork now. We're like I told you earlier, we're in my gym right now. It's all right over there. And I met my wife in large part due to her involvement in fitness. She's a personal trainer when we first met. But boy, I'm not about to go out on a run with her. She'll eat me up. The running things. I ran enough at the Citadel, the college I went to. When I got out of there, I'm like, I ain't running no more. But for you to make the I don't know. It's weird that I don't we still feel that need to sort of like physically punish ourselves. So that's cool.
Yeah,
But
man.
you've done it at a very high level.
I have this conversation with people that don't get it. It's not so much that they don't get it; it's just a different perspective, and it's much easier. Or how do I? word this? I guess it's much easier, or I think, in my opinion, it's much better to um, select your pain. Meaning, like, either you could, with intent, aim yourself towards whatever it is um, that ceiling that you're gonna hit, where it's obviously going to be painful, uh, perhaps emotionally and actually physical, because
Mhm.
you'll see that a lot of people emotionally break down from endurance sports, and physically too.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's life, man. I feel like, and that's with a lot of sports, but triathlon specifically, I started because I knew that I needed endurance to go into what I was doing. But as I was doing that, I started competing, and I quite literally fell in love with the sport. But I fell in love with the sport because I was beating people that for some reason needed the sport to make up some type of pedestal
Hmm.
to what we hit on before, like catching the big
Right,
fish
right.
just so you can take a
What
picture
can
with
I
it.
get out of this? How can I
Yeah,
be the star? Right. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
right, right. And it was really interesting with me because I never really needed to be put on any kind of pedestal. Like, I didn't really care, but
Yeah.
it was fun winning for sure. Don't get me wrong, winning is fun. But I learned that I actually enjoyed losing. Like, getting second place was probably like the best races that I've ever
Mhm.
had, because
Yeah.
I don't need to tell you, but maybe some of your listeners don't get it, and where you come up short, and then you're like, wait a second, dude, like, what did that, I'm looking at that guy, it's like, why did that guy beat me? It's like, what? It's like, what did that
Yeah,
guy
yeah.
do? All that guy did was that he was either smarter with his training, or he outworked you. So
Yeah.
that right there was like, wait, dude, that guy outworked me. It's like, forget that, that's not going to happen again.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's go again. So that part was really fun. Until in triathlon, the the categories are based on age group, which, I mean, a lot of sports are like that. But in the age group category, the most difficult throughout triathlon, and especially Ironman, which is the longest distance,
Yeah, yeah.
is it's 30 to 35 and 35 to 40. Those are the people, those are the kind of like the youngest, and also kind of like, usually within that world, the people that are very successful at a very early age, because, dude, triathlon is super expensive to get into.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, very expensive. It's a very elitist sport. You'll
Mhm.
notice that, like, the people that do it are like your CEOs, your entrepreneurs that really just
Yeah.
kind of are done being at the top of whatever pedestal they find to be important, and now they want to be on top of another one. And that sounded kind of negative, and it's not. It's just, it's not
Yeah.
right, not wrong. It's just what it is. And it was really fun for me going in with like a $300. Well, at the time, I mean, I made it a little bit better for sure. I didn't go in there with a mountain bike or anything, but me passing 10,000 or $12,000 bikes, just
Yeah.
because I really worked super hard. And I also knew a lot about aerodynamics, and I knew a lot about efficiency and things like that. So
Mhm.
um, so that was kind of just super fun for me, and also the places that you go to. That was kind of, I
Yeah,
love
yeah.
traveling, and if you could travel to different countries and see different surroundings, and quite literally have streets shut down for you to race. Yeah, dude, sign me up. Even though, dude, the races are super
Yeah.
expensive. I mean, you're talking about at the shorter distance, we're talking about 120 for the shortest one, and at the biggest one, it'll be like $1,200 for an event. So it's pretty expensive
Yeah.
sport.
Well, that's interesting. I feel like when you get to a point, I don't know, whether it's athletically or whether it's whatever you're passionate about, that you're competing more against yourself than you are with the people around you. That's when you're going to get the most fulfillment out of it. Um, I even like, just to draw some parallels, like when I was wrestling, when I first got into it, I wanted to beat that guy. But then it got to a point where, I don't know, I would look at the guy across from me on a mat, and it wasn't, there was no face, there was no name, it was an obstacle. It was a measuring point. for my own training. How well have I prepared? And now I'm going to have to test that against an unwilling partner, something that's not going to dance with me here. That's going to offer. It was an opportunity to meet resistance in a really unique way, but make no mistake, for me, it was, I am here to test my preparation. And I feel like you can be a little bit, I don't know. And if you lose there, it's like you're more fulfilled. And then in the sport you're doing, and I'm just imagining here because I don't know. I don't know that I could do it. Maybe I'm being too hard on myself. But I think like if you're running a
You need the
sprint,
right coach.
yeah.
You need the right coach.
If you're running a 100-meter race and you're trying to be the fastest man on the field, maybe you're worried about the guy next to you. But it seems like in those endurance races, and this is just my imagination, there's got to get to a point where it's you're hitting your wall and it becomes like you versus you. And I don't know if you have to start tapping into some reservoirs to figure out a way
Yes,
to.
there is a lot of people like that. I would say let's go with like 80% of the people that sign up for longer endurance triathlons, or actually across the board, any triathlon would meet that criteria, where like they go in, it was like, well, I just train really hard and I'm just going to finish and I'm just going to do my best and I'm going to try to get a PR. And if that gets me a good position, cool. Dude, that was never me. That was never me. And I don't think it's ever anyone that does it in a high level. It's always like, okay, this guy's competing. I'm like, all right, well, I got to either beat him at the end or beat him at my discipline. It gets to be, you have to be way more strategic. But it's also what you want to get out of it. If you're trying to compete and do really well, it's a different mindset. Or if you're just trying to do it to keep healthy and to finish and to stay injury free, then that's just a completely different mindset.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, when I think about that and I think about some of the physical things that I've done, at least I have always had enough self-awareness to know when, or at least I try to. I try really hard to, but I think we all kind of subconsciously find reasons for why we need to stop something. Oh, wow, darn, I can't work out today because I got to do this thing. And it's like it can be dangerous because it's like a relief sometimes comes over that you don't have to get involved in that. And I think a lot of people find convenient reasons why not to do the hard thing. And that's kind of where your story became really interesting to me because you kind of hit the worst sort of wall anyone could possibly hit, and what you experienced in September of last year while training, while on video. Just kind of walk me through that morning or afternoon or that training session. Just I'm just curious how the day transpired as a whole.
Oh man. Um, I, I've answered this question a lot to myself because I was trying to figure out the intricacies of the miracle. And that was actually one of the reasons that I actually wrote a book. And it's in the finishing. I actually finished it, but now I'm getting ready to kind of publish it and figure out how that works and
Oh yeah.
what I can, I guess, kind of like what's the best way to distribute and all that nonsense. And obviously, I have no idea what the hell I'm doing. I'm not a writer, but I knew that during the time that I'm sitting down, not doing much, and not doing much meaning I am limited to having a piece of my skull missing. I have to figure out, what other stuff I am meant to do. One of the things that I'm not meant to do is sit, um, not quietly, but doing nothing. I know that most men live quiet lives of desperation, not doing nothing. So all I have to do is just do something. It's
Yeah.
not going to be physical. It's not going to do whatever, but it is going to be something. So I guess to answer your question, the initial question of talk to you about the day, there's a lot of things that happen that I didn't think about for a while. Very unusual things that happened during that day. But the common denominator is just me rushing through things and kind of being arrogant about um, things that I just knew. I knew how to do what I did in a safely manner, meaning I always mitigate the risk. This is something that was driven in when I was a PJ, and every single either mission or training or whatever you were getting ready to do. And that's just kind of military motto. Actually, not even military motto, even firefighting or any kind of quote unquote dangerous job is where you mitigate the risk. Is the juice worth the squeeze type thing, right?
Yeah.
And when you don't mitigate the risk and you just go out, it's almost kind of expected. So instead of a 1% chance of this, it's more of like a 50% chance of this. And all you got to do is just kind of study your surroundings, figure out what's going on. And dude, I completely threw caution to the wind that day. Just utter blah. To include seeing an alligator there before I jumped in the water. Now, I will kind of, and obviously somebody listening to this will be like, well, you're a moron. You're dumb. And the thing is that for the most part, I guess, there's been a natural fear that those animals have for us that has disappeared with this people say love for these animals, but really is kind of just an utter kind of disrespect for the dominion that we do have over animals. And for some reason we kind of show them more respect and unusual love, really more respect and love for an animal than you have with a human. Which is dude, it's unbelievable to me. It's sad, really.
Yeah, 100%.
Which I spoke to you about the gentleman that I had a conversation with, and quite literally the trauma that he had with his attack, with this alligator attack, was not from the bite. It was from I don't know if it's hundreds, but definitely, I don't know, more than 10. He told me the number, I can't remember. But of angry phone calls, of angry emails from people saying, you did this, now it has to do this, this, this. And it's like, dude, people are so messed up. And I feel like really kind of, it's really sad. But that entire day it happened in a way where I wasn't actually training. I was actually, it was about a month and a half after my world championship Kona experience. It wasn't in Kona, it was in St. George. It got moved because of COVID. And for people that don't know, the Ironman World Championship is something that you can't sign up. You have to qualify, and then you go against the best people in the world, the fastest people in the world, everywhere, and you are basically you're going against studs and only studs. And because I was training and I was also working and I was also managing a triathlon team and a cycling team, I was kind of just I was enjoying myself for sure, but I was just kind of worn out of the sport, and I knew I wanted to take like a full refresher. So I wasn't really training all that hard. That day, I was actually shooting an instructional video because as part of my company, I shoot and I work out all the logistics and planning for races. And this race was going to be a little bit different than just a regular triathlon. So it needed a little bit more explanation. And instead of writing it down, I wanted to have a video to explain what you were to do. It was that's exactly what that was, exactly why the drone video was there. But I was running late from one meeting and on to the next one, and I was meeting with this gentleman that was assisting me with the drone footage, which later I found out that there was a lot of missing things with the drone, and he wasn't as prepared as I thought that he was going to be, because the video footage that is on YouTube and it's all over multiple newscasts, that was actually one of six videos. And all of those are very short snippets of actually really pivotal, important sections of time to include a time that I stopped because I saw a large island of floating vegetation, which was unusual.
Yeah.
And what went through my mind of where I thought I was going to turn around, but I didn't. And I thought it was kind of an arrogant thing. Maybe I should have turned around there. But afterwards, when I played the entire video, and I'm getting ready to edit this, I want to do a voiceover to kind of explain what I'm trying to explain to you. Um, and that entire day was for that purpose. When I was attacked, or when I don't know if attack is the right form, it's more like during the unfortunate meeting, because it really was a meeting. I was swimming towards it, and it was swimming towards me.
Yeah.
And I didn't have my goggles, and I didn't have a swim cap, which was pretty important because I had pretty long hair. You can see that I had pretty short hair now, but my hair was like pretty much actually kind of close to nipple line. And the common excuse of trying to grow out your hair enough so you can chop it off and give it to Love for Locks. But really, dude, my wife just loved it. My wife just loved the long hair. And I don't know if I would have actually cut it, dude. It was probably one of those empty promises. I mean, if I saw like a kid with cancer that wanted hair, dude, absolutely, I would have cut it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's one of those things. So a lot of really small little things that are very unusual to happen did happen. And on top of that, I got a video, which a lot of people have told me that it's what was that, nightmare juice? Yeah, nightmare juice.
Oh yeah.
And where like they watch the thing is like, and sometimes I watch because I have all the video on my phone, and I have conversations. Okay, aren't you that guy? I'm like, yeah, man. You have that video? I actually have other ones that I'm trying to explain, and they see that I'm not affected like 90 whatever percent of the people that go through a very traumatic experience.
Right.
And that wall that you speak of is very true. To include even today, and days where I'm not accustomed. I've gotten very accustomed to waking up early in the morning, and dude, just lately, that bed hugs me in such a way, in that it's like, no, you're not leaving me, dude. Just shut the lights off and shut up and go to sleep again. And I've fallen to that. Especially now, just coming back from vacation, and where like the time is different, and I really don't have to do anything except just wait until my next procedure. But that's not me, and it's also kind of it's attempting to change who I am.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, man, I'm not going to be lazy. I'm not going to be like, if I do this, I'm going to fall under this. And it's so awesome because this event has provided me with such a perspective that I truly needed in order to have enough confidence to help people at a pretty high level. And I say this because before I would always talk with, or I would hear people with a title of life coach, and I would hate that term. I would hate it so much, dude, because especially from young people, it's like, oh, dude, like get over yourself. You have nothing to, and people that charge all of this money, and it's like, I would have a really hard time swallowing that pill.
Yeah.
And people would tell me, it's like, oh, so you're basically a life coach. I'm like, stop. Like, no, I'm not a life coach. I'm not. But what I'm kind of doing now, and I know you didn't ask me this, and I'm sorry, I'm going over this tree branch here.
It's okay.
It's that I always had a certain level of sympathy for somebody that wanted to progress and become better. And sympathy, not in that I'm superior and I'm looking down to them. It was more like, oh, I see that you're having a hard time. Let me help you. But now I have such empathy because I am quite literally, I have seen the two darknesses the two dark areas, not darknesses, that doesn't make sense. The two dark areas that a lot of people quite literally battle with on a, if it not a daily basis, maybe a weekly basis.
Yeah.
And that is the manifestations of kind of two demons, if you will. One of them is the worry and the stress of the future that manifests into anxiety,
Yeah.
and the sadness and overwhelming feeling of the past that manifests itself as depression. And I had both of those in very short snippets, thank God.
Yeah.
And they were so overwhelming. And I actually wrote it on my book, and it's just it's a wonderful thing that I experienced because I didn't know that existed. I had,
Yeah.
well, no, of course I knew that it existed. Trust me, I've gone to enough very sad individuals where I am quite literally treating their deep laceration because they wanted to kill themselves.
Yeah.
And I've also have dealt with people that have are dealing with this unbelievable anxiety, and where they're just completely irrational, and just, you tell them to slow down their breathing, but I quite literally realized that that is such a ignorant thing to say to somebody that's doing that. So it's been, and I know it's weird to hear, but my very physically traumatic event is a huge blessing to me.
Yeah.
The only thing that I could change, possibly, I know it is the trauma that I put on my wife and my family. Like, if I could do the entire thing over and not put that much stress on my family, I would. I would do it again. kind of like the worst time I would never want to have again with the military. Maybe it'll be a little bit different because I see it as such a powerful, awesome thing. So that's kind of how the day planned out. I know that wasn't your question, but
no. I mean, you're saying the real meat of the experience is that it's not how bad did the bite hurt? Like, those are the very surface level things. So I'm much more interested in that side of the situation. And reading it, like I was really, really interested in reading, I don't know, you're just common theme of always putting yourself second is interesting to me. And the one thing that I read about your story that I thought was very interesting in the immediate wake of the attack. And it's amazing to me that, like, I don't know, it's like you see the head-on collision between you and this, I mean, massive alligator, but then there's a struggle, there's a fight, and that was probably an eternity wrapped up into a very short period of time, I imagine. But then your immediate instinct or autopilot or whatever happened that drove you to that nearby, there was a dock nearby. So the physicality, I imagine, in the wake of that, to pull yourself up onto the dock, go straight into self-treatment. I mean, there's so much you have to be equipped with to have the wherewithal to do that. But what I was really impressed by was the article that I read described that, I think maybe you were, correct me if I'm wrong, you were first approached by a resident of that home that was a child, and you went straight into, I don't want to scare this kid. I don't want to frighten them. And for you to have the presence of mind to think, I don't want to scare this kid, rather than help me, screaming, going into pandemonium mode, is really, really impressive to me. That you were, that part, that's crazy. Just like, I mean,
yeah, dude. To be honest, that's actually out of everything, that's actually the thing that I'm proud of, because it's something that I always harp on, and always something that I really dislike of people in need. And I get it, dude. You're in need. You're in, like, it's me. But also, you haven't looked behind you. Your mother's dead behind you, and you're worried about you. It is such a sad type of behavior, and I always kind of pray to not be that person.
yeah,
And I've kind of been, it's never been really me, but also I've always, quite literally, I mean, the motto for a pararescueman is that others may live, and that others may live has been kind of my motto for a long time, and
mhm,
it still is. Maybe not quite in the military, but life is obviously not only precious, but it's also I guess not only taken care of by in the physical sense, but also in the kind of like psychological sense. And where a lot of these broken people are broken down because of experiences and not even physical ones. Like even in the fire service, if you, well, I'm not going to give you the question that I usually give. I'll just break it down and where it's 80-20, dude. 80% is the type of calls that we get because they're psychological calls.
Yeah.
They're psychological calls because they have fallen because they're either too drunk because they are overwhelmed by their darkness, or they have they say that they have this diabetic problem, but they have this diabetic problem because they are internally unable to control their eating habits and their lifestyle. So it all comes back down to kind of like whatever psychological trauma that they had, which are they are unable to quite literally help themselves, right? And then obviously the 20% is, your car accidents, your fires, your things that are kind of just accidents that happen that are just unforeseen or sometimes seen, just people are just dimwit. And we're like, they start a fire because of a cigarette or something silly like that. So that's always kind of broken down in the 80-20 rule that I've kind of implemented, and I really just kind of want to help that the 80%ers. I'm forgetting of why we got into this tangent, dude. I'm sorry. Can you bring me back?
No. I mean, I wouldn't even say it's necessarily a tangent. It's an important, like, I don't know, organic path of the conversation, and you just having the mentality to think of, the other person that saw you in the condition you were in.
Right. Oh, yeah. So that's why I went on that. Right. So,
Yeah.
watching that video, and actually, there's a short video right after that when when the attack happened, when I got my what I call it, kind of like my uh, my spiritual orders, if you will, kind of like that heartfelt message of what I needed to do, but I needed to do it. I quite literally, it's not like I could sit there and just kind of hope that whatever it is that you believe in for me as God to kind of elevate me and put me in a place is it's not how this works, how the software of the world. It's, you do have to put in your effort and have enough faith that you can get out of the situation and act upon that. There's always that. So and for me, the message was very clear, was open its mouth, swim to the dock, you're going to be okay. So I felt super okay with that. I'm like, I'm going to be okay. I'm like, so cool.
And you knew this was an alligator when it happened. You said open its mouth. I mean, it was,
yeah.
Was it an immediate realization of what was happening, or what was like, what the hell? Just like, I would think maybe a boat hit me. Maybe I don't know.
No, yeah, 100%. So it was a second. It was more like, actually, no, dude, it was so weird. Like I got that that feeling very quickly where I really didn't know where I was in until I felt scales and then teeth.
Mm.
And I'll go over this rather quickly because it's, well, maybe I'll go into as deep detail as you want, but it's when I spoke to Flavio, the crocodile conflict expert, about the details of how this could be done, because people thought that I was the strongest person in the world opening an alligator's mouth, especially a 12-footer or even a 5-footer, dude. Just like, no, that's not going to happen unless you're right. And as much as I want to take that accolade from the world's strongest man, it's like, all right, take it easy, dude. Like I may be good at some things, but I'm not. But in the reality of it all, if you think about it, if we are in a floating prone position meaning I am looking down at the water,
mm-hmm.
and that's swimming. I meet the alligator with the very first, which I didn't realize, the very first hit was snout to skull. I initially thought that it was my head into its jaws. That's what I thought the first impact was.
Mm-hmm.
But I was actually incorrect about that. And further clarification came with the x-ray of my skull, and where I thought that the divot in my skull was, from lack of better word, kind of like the canine, the fang teeth from the alligator. And I thought that that's what it was. But if you follow the scar, that doesn't make sense. It's completely in a different area. Well, Fabio was like, well, dude, take a log that's just floating in the water and you didn't see it, and you hit it going, I don't know, the equivalent of like 3 to 5 miles per hour, you're going to have a really badly bruised whatever you hit it with.
Right.
Now add another 3 to 5 mile per hour, maybe even faster, because that thing was beaming towards me.
Yes.
And we later found out that it was a female guarding a nest.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It was going towards me. So it hit me first with its snout, which I felt like I ran into a telephone pole, and then it opened its mouth. So I got a combo, a combo hit, dude. Chompers hit me with that combo, and then what I did was following kind of the instructions that I was given. Was more like, if I was open its mouth, I did it in a very natural, beautiful way. Which now, looking at the video, it corroborates my story, which is another reason why I love that video. So I was going towards it, and upon impact, upon snout hitting my skull, I was with my right hand stroke. And for anybody that swims, or maybe people that don't swim, all you're doing with your swim stroke is that you are grabbing as much water in front of you to push it below you and propel yourself forward. That's pretty much what swimming is.
Yeah.
I guess kind of like the easiest definition for a swim stroke. A freestyle swim stroke obviously is different for different strokes. But with that, my right hand was trying to grab water, but instead of water, I met it with scales, and then very shortly was teeth. And then that's when I already knew. So my right hand went to the lower jaw of the gator, okay? Which obviously, if you can imagine a swimming alligator, and you are swimming also, my right hand went to the lower part, and then more like muscle memory of anybody that's is an endurance swimmer, or maybe not even an endurance, any swimmer that has swum for a long period of time, they'll tell you that they're not really thinking about swimming. They're thinking about their position, and they're thinking about they're not so much thinking about their swim stroke, just like a runner wouldn't think about the next step that they take.
Yeah.
It's more like muscle memory, go, 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 go. Well, naturally, when this ended up here, and I was grabbing quite literally teeth, they were dull, large teeth. At the time, they felt dull, but I'm like, oh man, my hands are going to be jacked.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I'm going to have so much blood in my hands. But with my left, I started almost like muscle memory, started my left stroke, but instead of finishing my stroke, I grabbed the upper jaw. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So as I grabbed the animal with my right hand at the bottom and my left hand at the top, I'm trying to do an opening motion. Okay. So because I was doing this, and I was talking to Fabio about this, I'm like, hey man, I know how this sounds, but I don't think that it flipped me. I think that I flipped it. Can you help me rationalize this? Am I like, is this a silly thing? He was like, well, tell me more. Like, how do you think this happened? And it's crazy, because the size of the animal actually made this even more likely. Obviously, you look at a big gator, you think more chomping power, more aggression, more strength, more everything, because bigger, heavier, everything. Well, because it was larger, and it actually potentially didn't. This is more of like a 70% truth. I don't know what the gator was thinking,
Yeah, yeah.
but I know what I was thinking and I know what I did. That's definitely like a 99% truth, right? 100% truth, if you want to believe me. But you can also look at the video to corroborate the whole thing.
Right.
So it was likely that it didn't know what I was doing and kind of figuring out with that bite. And also, as if it was figuring out with that bite, because I acted so quickly, what I did is that he called it a state of tonic immobility, which I think you've played enough with gators and where you kind of have heard the term or know that when you turn alligators enough, they go kind of limp. And when
Yep.
they go limp,
Yep.
the very first thing is that they lose strength in their mouth and they just kind of let go.
Yeah.
Well, as I'm trying to open his jaws, and I'm quite literally in there deep. I mean, so deep that I have a 3 to 4 inch laceration on my chest, probably about like 2 or 3 inches above my nipple.
Yeah.
And that's all really neat for people that are not watching. As soon as I do a right hand stroke, it my hair's kind of covering up on my chest. But
Yeah.
as soon as I do a right hand stroke, it lines up with my face scar. Because before I'm looking at my
Mm.
scar, I'm like, what is this? The end of it? Like the end of the snout, the front of its mouth. I'm like, how does this make sense? And then I go like this. I'm like, oh. So I literally was I wasn't even all the way in its mouth, meaning like I didn't get attacked by like the front of the snout. So I was kind of like so deep, whatever, that's not important, it doesn't matter, but I was deep in that thing's mouth, right?
Yeah.
I was I was checking his tonsils.
Yeah.
So when I am turning it, Flavio explained to me that it is a lot like a small plane propeller, and where you don't necessarily have to completely turn it around in order to turn. It's more like it turns and it wants to turn with. And as soon as it turns, their eyes go into a state of stigmas, and then it just kind of just goes limp. So that's exactly what happened to me. And the huge, incredible thing was also that I it went limp just the right amount of time for me to go to the dock that I was directed to, because there was
Yeah.
2 docks. You look at the video and there's 2 docks.
Okay.
If I would have gone to the dock on the right side, I would have maybe made it, and then gotten out. And that dock is a private dock. The dock that I went to was a homeowner association dock.
Mm.
The dock to the right was the house is owned. I've been told owned by a gentleman that is rarely there, and the likelihood of me having to jump a fence and go over and look at other homes was pretty high. I
Right.
don't know
Right.
for a fact, but what I do know is that the dock that I went to was about 3 to 4 feet above water. So after I rotated the animal and kind of placed it in this tonic immobility state, I knocked it out, if you will. It sounds better that way. I
Yeah.
knocked it out because I knew what I was doing. Of course, I'm an expert in all to do with alligators. I'm just an incredible human.
Yeah.
I know, dude. I had no idea what the hell I was doing. I just kind of did what I had to do, and I did.
Yeah.
And luckily, it knocked it out. So it I swim to the dock, and that's where you heard about kind of like the next stages of things that I did. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, it's one of those things where I think it's real easy for people to kind of armchair biologist the whole situation. But it is curious that you mentioned that there's possibility, or maybe they even confirmed it if there was a nest nearby. And again, I'm not an alligator scientist, but I would think that there's got to be a difference between a protection like coming at you to get you to go away, and a predatory response where you're a food item. Where I don't know which one's worse, but I would think maybe you could have benefited from it. Maybe it felt like it had gotten the job done and getting you to simply go away. But again, it's one of those things, and it's not really it's good and bad to sit back and kind of like analyze those things when you're the person on the outside looking in. But I did think it is almost kind of sad when, and you mentioned the guy that had reached out to you saying that actually the most negatively impactful thing out of all of it was maybe the public's reaction. And it's one of those things where it's just not healthy to go to the comment section on. But I always look at that, and I did. I'm going straight to the comments. I got to see what these people are saying. I'm not going to engage, but sometimes I just find it fascinating how people who live, and it seems almost without fail, the ones that will react negatively, in I'll dig into it, and I don't want to judge a book by its cover, but I'll look at these people and I'm like, you know what? This looks like a person who lives a very sadly mundane life that
Yeah.
is looking for a way to validate their reason for not doing anything that's risky, if that makes sense. Because you'll see these people that go, that's why I don't go to the water. That's why I don't do a triathlon. That's why I don't climb a mountain. Okay. Is that what it is? Like, is that
No.
really the reason? Or are you trying to validate? So you'll see these people who live this very unhealthy and unfulfilling lifestyle that don't want to point at themselves for not taking, risk. Not that you obviously want to be calculated in the things that you do, but I think of the people that live on the edge, the people that, go mountain climbing. And there's that cast of people that are quietly sitting in the shadows that only watch because they want to see
Disaster.
yes. And
Yeah.
it's such a sad thing. And so I went and I
Oh,
looked at it.
man.
I'm like, look at all these people who have done nothing with their lives that are excited to see somebody who is doing something with their life fail. And it's like, that's why I don't do that. No, that's not why. The point, like, fingers need to be pointed at yourself. Now, to your point, I'm sure you had moments of like retrospect and thinking, well, that probably wasn't too smart, but it's again, a lot of the most fulfilling things we can do in our lives kind of have that element of the risk that's involved. So there's just no sense sitting there and thinking that. I sometimes wonder how often death passes people by and they don't even know it. Every time
Oh,
you get
dude,
in your car,
every day.
yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, every second that goes by, the potential is always there. But I mean, I think if you, and again, like I said, you're smart if you recognize that that's looming. But if it keeps you living this sheltered, I don't know, unfulfilling life, and it frightens you to the point of never doing anything interesting, I don't know. The end result seems worse to me. Like you're dying in a different kind of way. To your point, almost dying spiritually. So that's it's funny that you mentioned that. And I seen there's one other guy out there that I saw that probably has the most similar story to yours that I've seen, or at least the nature of the attack is probably the most similar. You probably saw this too. I know there was a guy, he was in the Peace River here. I think it was the Peace River, and he was diving for shark's teeth in the river.
That's the
And
gentleman I'm talking about.
okay. Yeah, because he had a GoPro on his head when it
Yeah.
happened. And that
What's
was
his
another,
name? I forget
I
his
don't remember, but one simple Google
name.
search. But that was another one. And again, the people in the comments section, what are you doing diving for this in the rivers? What are you doing?
No,
Check the
dude,
box.
he got death threats.
So it's just outrageous.
He got death threats, and when I spoke to him, I really had it in my heart that I really needed to talk to this kid because
Yeah.
it seemed to me that he was still kind of having those lingering effects, and I really wanted to talk to him because I just wanted to see, like, because, well, the very first thing, it was what amazed me was that he was so um wanting he just was so adamant about meeting me and making sure that I was
Mhm.
okay. And I was like, dude, this is so nice of you. and
Yeah.
and actually, I didn't want to sound rude and be like, hey, dude, I'm really okay. Like, this is not a front. Like, I'm perfectly okay. I mean,
Yeah.
physically,
Yeah.
yeah, my head my head looks like it's a large pumpkin, and I have a giant scar, and I have a tube down my throat and all that stuff. But dude, I am fine. I know it's weird
Yeah.
to because I have heard people say I'm fine, and it's not the fine, it's more like leave me alone type I'm fine.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
mine was not like that. Mine was like, dude, I'm fine. Thank you so much for your prayers. Thank you so much for everything else, for your kind words, for whatever. So I think he felt like I was just kind of maybe shooing him away. But then I just kind of messaged him. I'm like, hey man, do you still want to have this conversation? And once I did, and I'm hearing this young man, I heard the passion of what he does with the shark teeth,
Yeah.
uh, and I also heard the hurt from these these people online that just have like absolutely no concept of the meaning of human life.
Mhm.
And where like they were so upset about this animal that it's not even my opinion. It's a fact. Whether you like it or not, I don't really care. But it's a fact that they're overrunning some areas, and it makes no sense in why there's a limitation um, of of tags of hunting them. It
Right.
makes, now I don't know too much about the limitation and all that, but I do know from, I actually live on a lake here, and I actually do swim on this lake. And there's a lot of water activities that happen on this lake. That anytime that we call somebody, when we do see something that is large enough to call, or when it becomes kind of a nuisance,
Right.
they take forever to come, and if they come at all. And actually, I learned something pretty interesting talking to somebody, but I won't go down that rabbit hole, 'cause I think I'm going to be interviewed by somebody for this particular thing. And I'm trying to figure out how I can be strategically helpful in that realm, and where it's like,
Yeah.
if
Well,
you're not going to put money into this public service, then just allow the public to do something about it.
sure. Well, I can expand on that too. Just like I said, I mean, again, this is primarily a fishing podcast, but it goes beyond that. I want there to
Mm.
be some depth to this. But being that I have spent so much time around the water, and clearly I've been around alligators, there is a very interesting irony behind the same people that will say, now he's responsible. Oh, they went and euthanized the alligator. Look at that. He's responsible for the death of this thing. Are you responsible? Or I have just noticed in certain areas that I go fishing, the alligators are extremely bold to approach. And what has caused them to become emboldened are the very same caliber of people who are complaining because they're out there feeding them. They're
Feeding.
conditioning them to understand that humans need food. Humans are like a source of food. So the same people that are saying this are the ones that may or may not have given this alligator a level of boldness to approach in the first place. Because I
Right.
will go to very remote places in my fishing endeavors. And if you see a 10-foot, 12-foot alligator, they're the most timid and shy and afraid of all of them. And if they're
They
not used to seeing people, you can't get anywhere near these. They are gone. It's the areas where there's high public traffic. So like down here, I do a lot of fishing on the Tamiami Trail on US 41. And there's a lot of roadside attractions along that route. You get a lot of out of state people who want to get out of their car, take pictures, do this, do that. They're throwing bread, they're throwing hot dogs, they're throwing marshmallows. These alligators down there are absolutely out of control. And it gets to a point where when you're fishing, and it's the same thing with anglers who are irresponsible with their catches, the alligators will look at you and they know if you're holding a fishing rod, dinner time, I'm coming to take that fish. And it's like there's a responsibility to frighten it away or just leave and not perpetuate this problem that is causing these things to approach. But I just always find that very ironic. The very people that are the biggest proponents for the animals' rights in the wake of these attacks are the ones that have created this, whether it be a campsite that bears come into, and these people think it's a cuddly bear. They can stop. You see the videos every year of them getting out at Yellowstone National Park, walking up on a bison,
so
getting gored.
stupid.
And it's just, these are the same people that I don't know if they watch too much Disney or what it is. They don't understand the reality of a wild animal, but they are the ones that have emboldened the animals that a lot of times cause these issues. They happen 90% of the time. Well, I'm giving percentages. I shouldn't give percentages, but these attacks that keep occurring in Florida or where have you, ironically, are happening at golf courses. They're happening in gated community private lakes. They're happening in places where the alligators are surrounded by people. And and I've lived in these neighborhoods where there's that celebrity alligator and they call it, oh, that's Big George. You've named it. You have an emotional attachment to that thing. And that's not good for that animal. It doesn't care who you are. It wants your dog. It wants, you know what? They're there to eat. I hate to go off on that tangent, but it's something I feel very passionate about beyond being an angler. I want people to have a realistic outlook on wildlife. So it's just one of those places. You look at the comment section, it's like it's the least outdoorsy people that want to have the most to say.
I know that people that are usually surrounded by four walls seem to want the most say about places that don't have walls. It makes no sense. But dude, I just got back from Costa Rica. And there's a place close to Jacko where there's a bridge that goes over kind of like this small little inlet that goes out to the ocean. And I joke, I'm not really joke because they are dinosaurs. But dude, the crocodiles in that area are, maybe they seem big because of, I don't know, maybe the reflection of the water. But when I tell you that these things are, dude, I'm looking at it and I'm like, that's not normal. That thing is 20 freaking feet, dude. Like, it actually, I was confirmed there was an Australian family next to me, and they go, what the hell are they feeding these things? And there's a restaurant that obviously gets attractions. They're actually called, like, in Spanish, Alligator something. And of course, people stop to look at them and then they go eat and drink or whatever. So I'm sure that it's illegal for them to put food down. But dude, the amount of them, like 20, 30 of them, just kind of just sitting around in the perfect area for people to throw things at them, it's unbelievable. And not that it's going to be in the news, or maybe it is, dude, here pretty soon there's going to be a terrible accident that had to do with some kind of kid or some kind of local surfer or some kind of, because they go and try to expand or whatever, and then they come back. And I mean, those are closed beaches where people surf.
Yeah.
And dude, these things are monsters. They're just, dude, just look at, I was just amazed of their size. They were just it made me want to have one of their skulls. Which, dude, I need to go hunting with you. I would love to go out and fish one of these days with you. Not necessarily because I want to hunt it because some type of revengeful thing, but I do want to eat it, and I think it would be cool. I think it would be cool to have not a taxidermy, because I think that would actually, dude, a taxidermy would be sick. But even like a skull, which actually I was promised a skull, but I didn't really follow up with it.
Well, ironically, I have one in my garage of a 12-foot alligator.
Really?
I won't get in the story that may be self-incriminating as to how I acquired the skull, but I've got a skull and it has an interesting story behind it. And it's like one of my most valued things. And I like awesome. You, but I can't give it to you. But
no way, dude.
When you were describing that, I was thinking of that Billy Madison. Is it Billy Madison? No, Billy Madison. Happy Gilmore.
Oh no, it is Happy Gilmore.
Yeah. Where what's the character's name? It's Carl Weathers, I think.
Yeah.
And they he brings him the alligator and it scares him. He falls out of the window,
and then he dies.
Yeah. So he's so traumatized, but I don't know. That kind of leads into the obvious question that people are going to ask. And it's like, I know what your answer is because in this period of time we've gotten to know each other. I know your character. Well, people are always going to ask, oh, will you ever go back to the water? Can you ever swim again?
Dude, I thought immediately when somebody asked me that question, I'm like, yeah, of course. But the thing is that when I would speak to a lot of people and people that have been in some type of physically traumatic event, and where they think they're over it and it takes them years to do, etc. I'm talking about even somebody that got in an accident with their bicycle, and they're literally unable to ride their bike for a really long time. So, you can talk the talk until you do it. So when I said it, I'm like, hey, yeah, I would love to, like, I want to, whatever. But I was in Costa Rica just last week, and we were in Tortuga Island, and a buddy of mine. This is the first time that I swam since, because mainly because I still don't have my temporal lobe. I don't know if you can see. So it was just one of those things, and we're like, if I go swimming and something hits me, it's kind of like, "Ugh, dude, what a bummer. Like, let me just chill out completely." But in the ocean, when I was there with my friends and people that I've actually trained previously, I looked at the island. They were like, dude, let's go swim to that other island over there. And I'm like, yeah, dude, if you guys are down, like, let's absolutely go. We'll write something down. Dude, there's nothing better than and like an adventurous swim. It's just awesome.
Yeah.
And the boat was getting ready to leave. He gave us like a 20-minute warning. I'm like, all right, dude, it's now or never. I'm like, all right, dude, come on. So I got them all, and then we started swimming. It ended up being like a 600-meter swim, which, dude, is so long for somebody that hasn't swum in like 5 months.
Yeah.
And and actually it was against the current. And the very first 20 strokes, dude, it was quite literally as if I was swimming into the mouth of some type of animal. And it's one of those things in where I talk about this a lot with people, that I sense some fear. And excuse me, I talk to them about irrational and rational fears. Irrational fear is something that you kind of made up in your mind, or have heard of something, and you just that has quite literally stopped you from doing what you're doing, just because of your thoughts and feelings. You know what I mean? Things that really, at the end of the day, don't really matter. You know what I mean? Like, your feelings, nobody cares, and they don't matter. That sounded kind of harsh, but let me follow up. And where and then we'll say, like, rational, meaning like a fear of like something right in front of you, and where you don't want, like, if the stove is hot, you're afraid to put your hand there because it's going to get burned. It's like, yeah, that's a fact, because
Right.
it will get burned. That's a rational fear that prevents you from doing that. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. But you not wanting to touch the stove even though it's off, that's irrational. That's an
Yeah.
irrational fear. So with this, it was when I was swimming, I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess this is irrational. There's not going to be any alligators through here. There might be some other kind of animal, but the likelihood, once again, it's the boat life. There's other people. There's current. There's all these different things. It's very unlikely that something is there. And I had to quite literally just snap out of it, because that's kind of my lifestyle, and it's where I love exploring. I love being outside. I love experiencing God's creations in the best way that I know how, which is through my own efforts.
Yeah.
Putting my, a foot in front of the other, or a stroke in front of the other, or a pedal in front of the other, however. So, dude, I can't tell somebody to do something and then me not being able to do it. I can't be a
Right.
hypocrite, you know? So yeah, that kind of fear just kind of went away after I looked. And dude, one thing that I have noticed is that when you, let's say me, and I think this could really work for other people, and where you, when something stops you, you are very when you are affected by a trauma, you immediately become very self-consumed, very worried about yourself, and which is, it's not bad. It's not bad or good. It's just a fact, right? Well, I found that when you immediately take yourself out of that situation and worry about others, that fear goes away.
Yeah.
Fear completely goes away. I can give you like 5 different examples of how I found that out, to include my very first public panic attack in New York City.
Mm.
But in this case, I turned behind me because I'm a faster swimmer than my friends. But I stopped and I turned behind me because I wanted to see if they were okay, if they were made it, because we were already swimming maybe like 100 meters. And as soon as I turned around and I saw them swimming, my fear disappeared, all gone.
Yeah.
So now I'm gone. So now I'm going to completely, because I was swimming with fear, legitimate fear, for about like maybe like 50 to 100 yards. And then when I turned around and saw those guys, it just completely went away.
Yeah.
So that's and I've used that quite a lot. And yeah, I hope that helps somebody that's listening.
Yeah, for sure. And I think we've kind of covered like where I know most people's minds going to go before they, I don't know, some people like me want to know the deeper side of it, but people are always going to ask, why were you out there? How did you survive? And like what next? And I think you've expanded up on that. Well, hang on a minute. It got me right near the eye. I've held out so well. But anyway, just I mean, as we kind of wind down here, I mean, this is such an amazing conversation, and being that you live only in Tampa, I may have to reach out next time. I fish around Tampa a lot, so I'll have to get you a heads up. Now, if you want to come fishing with me, that's great. I'm more likely to do that than to join you on one of these long distance runs. I just be slowing you down. But
dude, let me interrupt real quick. So
yeah.
Part of my business is actually fishing, spear, and actually kayak, because that's all part
that
of
is
the
awesome.
adventure, right?
Yeah.
And we actually do have a store that actually sells kayaks and every single accessory that you can think of.
Yeah.
And if you are down and you don't have a kayak and we want to come, you can show me fishing around my area. Please contact me. I'll connect you with everything to include rods, and we'll go out and you can show me, dude.
Yeah, well, we'll have to set that up for sure. So I imagine we'll be in touch even after this. But
yeah, man, absolutely. I'm looking forward to it.
But anyway, I'm just thinking, what I appreciate about you. We kind of expanded on some of the negative thoughts that prevail in society, the negative comments. It's just, I don't know, the space that we kind of exist in too much outside of our normal lives. That's online or in front of a screen, where people feel a lot more bold to spread the negativity out there. And I will just say, I appreciate the source of positivity that you're putting out there that's combating that. I think your voice speaks with a lot more authority, given your real life, legitimate experience.
Sure,
As I talked about earlier, when I hear people that say negative things, I can take one click and see they're speaking from no depth, no, I don't know. But anyway, and the fact that you have had every reason to stop doing what you love and be passionate about, but rather than to stop or find a reason to stop, it seems like now I don't know, it's like you have more of a why to actually pick up the pace. So I've got every bit of confidence that this company that you've started, that is just, I mean, by design, is to help other people, is going to take off. Your story is incredible.
Thanks, man.
But man, between the book, the company, you coming on here on my little old podcast, and just putting your voice out there to continue to tell that story, I really appreciate your time. Again, it's not fishing, but it's very, very important message. And I'll always open the airwaves for people who have a unique story like this to kind of share. And because, I feel like there's a lot of people out there who, I don't know, they themselves have found a reason to stop doing what they enjoy, no matter what the passion is. I don't care if it's crochet. They poked themselves with a crochet needle one time and don't want to do it anymore. But that encouragement is hard to find nowadays, especially from somebody who's actually has real life experience and coming back from something. So, dude, very, very inspiring. This will be a hard one to top, at least for me. So I really appreciate your time coming on here.
Oh man, my pleasure, dude. Thank you so much for inviting me, man.
Yeah.
I've been wanting to talk to you for, and I'm congratulations on your on everything, on your organization, the setup, dude.
Yeah.
Continue, man. I'm very much looking forward to what's next. And if you want to have me again at any point, I love to be on.
Sure. Well, one last time too, because people are going to find this Very interesting. But where can they find you on social, your website? Again, reminder of the company name. We've talked about it, but I want people to know like where they can go to find more, to get a little bit more involved. Whatever. How can people find you?
So the website is join. So I'm asking you to join a team and join defeatx.com. Defeat is DEFEATX.com. And the website has been changing in the last 3 years because I was trying to figure out in which angle I wanted to be the most help and also to provide the most amount of value.
Mhm.
And I think I have found that there's a couple of things that I need to figure out logistically to where I can actually start bringing in with consultations and start building these adventure teams. Because the end goal is to train people into a vacation. There's a lot of people that go on vacation and come back and be like, holy smokes, I'm really out of shape.
Yeah.
And instead of having that, it's more like having a very figured out adventure vacation and where you're like completely ready to go on it. You just have an unbelievable time and a story that was that you're able to repeat with other adventures, or you are able to tell others, and stop living a life in where you take a break to really enjoy life and instead kind of hitting it from another angle, if you will. But my personal handle is JC Defeats on Instagram, and then Defeat X Co is the handle for the company, and where most of my athletes that I have, whether in any kind of endurance side, is there. That one has been been stalled out because I'm unable to manage my
Mhm.
athletes, and from not being able to kind of be outside myself. But my last surgery is at the end of this month, and God willing, I'll be out there again in probably like the end of February, beginning of March. And the book will be, I guess I'll just kind of keep that on the low. We'll figure
Okay.
out when what publishing, what area will be out, but it'll definitely be advertised on one of those handles if you are interested. It's very raw. It's very not really caring about people's feelings and thoughts. It's
Hmm.
more like, this is what I know to be true, and I this is what I know it's a helps, and I know it's gonna kind of hurt people's feelings. And I'm actually kind of aiming to not hurt people's feelings, but really kind of do the right awakening that
Right.
needs to happen instead of this BS woke thing. And that is
Hmm.
just, in my opinion, is very superficial and doesn't really have any facts,
Yep.
which is really aggravating.
Couldn't agree more, and I'll be anxiously awaiting the book, and I'll be sharing all the socials and the websites and things like that because people got to check it out. There's a lot of good, and it seems like you're pretty, as consistently as you can, posting short clips of, you know, little tidbits of motivation, but it comes from a guy that's really been through it, and I think you've painted that picture very clear today. So, JC, man, really appreciate your time. We'll be in touch for sure after this.
Yeah, dude, for sure. One last thing.
Yeah.
You can also find me on YouTube, which is kind of like the next thing
Oh
that
yeah, yeah.
how I'm gonna drive the interviews and the podcast to talk about with other people about their traumatic experiences and
Mm.
how they've figured it out, or maybe they haven't. And that would be that's kind of my next adventure there. But that's kind of like the YouTube. So subscribe if you can to the page. And yeah, man, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Very cool. All right, man. We'll let you get to
Appreciate
it.
you,
I
dude.
appreciate you.
Take care, brother.